Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Nerd Avengers. Guess where I am? You'll never guess. I'm floating above the Chicago skyline because we've got nerds on the ground here at the DNC. Danielle and Jen and I and Allie and Brian are here with some other people on the team doing the work behind the scenes. And I got to say, Norm, this is incredible. I've never been to a convention before, but I can't imagine that anything that's preceded this is as good.
Well, I've been to a lot of them, and uh, the scene inside the hall, the level of enthusiasm. The only time I've seen anything that's close to that was when I was on the floor in Boston, and the young state senator Barack Obama gave his talk that vaulted him into this enormous national prominence. And, there have been moments, of course, when people were very excited, but nothing like what we saw last night. And that's for both Hillary Clinton and for Joe Biden. And, one of the things I tweeted out this morning is, so going well past midnight, Joe Biden gave this incredible, energetic, hour-long talk. How about we start referring to Sleepy Donald now? That
Totally.
yeah. It's unfortunate in some respects, although, watching some of the journalists, go on and on about how they blew it with the lateness, I don't think that mattered much at all. They did probably crowd in a few too many people, but boy, I'll tell you, Jamie Raskin and some of the other speeches were just incredible. And I've just never seen the level of all out enthusiasm. And, I would shout out, among others, AOC. I thought AOC's talk was fantastic. I mean, I've watched her with enormous admiration in the House, where she is able to do in 5 minutes of questions what very few members, and this was true from the time she first came to the House, to fillet witnesses, to bring with goods the questions. But last night, which underscored the degree to which this has enormous breadth in this party, and to follow AOC last night with Adam Kinzinger tonight, I think is really an important set of statements. And it has to leave you cautiously optimistic. We have to be cautious because we know that there's going to be a high level of voter suppression and intimidation and chicanery afterwards. And we know that we're still in a tribal environment. But boy, I don't know how anybody could watch last night, how any suburban voters could watch those three women talking about their personal experiences with abortions and with the Handmaid's Tale that we now face in Texas and so many other states, and not come away understanding what the stakes are in this election.
Yeah, Norm, it seems to me that the abundance of speakers aside, and I guess I just figured that's what conventions are, right?
Yeah.
They just have, the speakers all day, and some of them are more riveting than others. But part of what the agenda seemed to be yesterday is to create the arc of the narrative, right? This is the overarching vision that the Harris Walz team and the Democratic Party has for America. And as you say, the speeches overall touched on the most salient points of that narrative, and it's going to continue to be fleshed out over the week. First of all, hi everybody. It's good to see all of you. Julie, welcome. It's great to have you back on the Nerds. I want to go to you next because you're here in a very special role, and I want to get your sense of how this is all playing out, and just remind everybody It's been a month since Joe Biden chose to pass the torch to Kamala Harris. Conventions usually they start planning them 4 years in advance as soon as somebody gets into the White House for their first term. And I mean, yesterday felt seamless. And before we get to what you're doing here specifically, I just want to show people what it means to have a large crowd somewhere. That's a crowd. And really wasn't just that every seat was full, and that was our view last night. I mean, it was just extraordinary. It was the energy, and more importantly than anything else, the unity.
It was an extraordinary evening. Mary, thank you for having me. Hi to everybody. I'm just, for folks who don't know me, I'm an original Kamala supporter since 2019. I co-founded for Kamala in 2019. And I'm here at the convention as a Maryland delegate. And I have to say, yes, Danielle, I have to say Maryland got amazing placement on the floor. We are so fortunate. We had a great spot to see the ginormous crowds, the up to the ceiling ocean of supporters for Kamala Harris and for the Democratic Party, for Joe Biden. And the energy was incredible. There were so many compelling moments. I mean, obviously Hillary coming in was just a very powerful moment for everybody in the room. I think, seeing the three women and Amanda's husband come talk about the journeys they've been on with respect to trying to have babies, just stunned everybody. And was just, I don't know, I just hope independent voters were watching that. I just hope, because the Democrats already know what's at stake. I just hope independent voters saw that piece of the program. But I have to say, as an original Kamala supporter and somebody who was deeply, deeply sad also that Joe Biden, came to the conclusion that he was going to drop out, seeing the love, the ocean of love for Joe Biden when he came out, as late as it was just a beautiful thing. It literally, we had these "We Love Joe" signs, "Thank you, Joe" signs. Everybody was so fired up, and recognizing what an incredible legacy he brings, what an incredible gift he has brought to lift Kamala Harris up as the vice president and to now pass the torch to her. It was just a stunning moment, and I am just honored that I got to be in that room.
Yeah, and just to put an exclamation point on what you just said, and it was just being there was indescribable. Check this out. And there were "We Love Joe" signs everywhere. I mean, it was really moving. And again, Brian, the unity, you're here. It's have you ever seen anything like it in your career as a political journalist? And perhaps more to the point, do you see any reason to chip away at the idea that that Dems are in array? Because it seems to me they are.
First of all, the women were stronger last night than any of the men who spoke, without a doubt. And if there's any doubt that Joe Biden is the gateway to the future, he put that to rest last night efficiently, effectively, and with a passion that I was convinced came from the heart and was not part of a political maneuver. I think Joe's speechwriters suck. I could tell you that. He was much better when he went off script, and the few times that he was tongue-tied, it was nice where we were sitting in the press corps to be able to see the board he was reading off of, the teleprompter, because, in the past, in hearing him speak, he comes to moments where he's tongue-tied, and you want to believe that's because he stutters. Well, last night it was because whoever wrote the speech just was really poor at constructing sentences. So I was impressed with Joe's speech last night. But to your point, Mary, the thing that I found I've covered every Democratic convention since '84, every Republican convention since '92. And no, I've not seen anything. I was last night just struck by the energy, but more importantly, I think what I was struck by was the fact of there was a sense of purpose. That sense of purpose has been sorely lacking in many Democratic conventions, and usually in a Republican convention, while their sense of purpose is clear, it's always about winning, winning, winning. The purpose that I saw last night was impressive in that it was about us. It was about, and there were two main themes that I think, and reading all the encapsulated summaries of what went on and the opinions from my fellow pundits in the press, I think they missed probably the three top things that were talked about in every speech. One, that the rich have to pay their fair share. Two, that working class and working people matter. And probably the one that no one really missed, but the most overall point that was made is that women have a right to be citizens and have a right over their own body, which the Republicans don't seem to give a shit about. So bringing that home, and then there were some. All of the speeches touched on. There were some really good speeches that came. AOC had a spectacular one. Hillary got more applause than anyone on that floor, other than the president himself. There were speeches that were made that spoke to LGBTQ rights and racism and civil rights. All of them scored. So I don't think there's any doubt that the Democrats are after night one, and we still have 3 more days. But after the first night, I think there's no doubt that there is no disparity in the Democratic Party, that there is no fracturedness in the Democratic Party, and that's what cost them in 2016 when all the Bernie bros voted for Trump or didn't vote at all. I saw that from night one in 2016. I don't see that. I see none of that today. Like I said, I've never seen one that's been that energetic or that unified. So we'll see if it carries on. I'm always the skeptic because that always happens. But yes, I got to tell you, that was the best opening night of any convention I've ever seen.
Yeah, and Waj, part of it, as Brian says, it was the unity of purpose and of message, but also the contrast that's being painted between what Democrats have to offer and this sort of dystopian, apocalyptic nightmare Donald Trump would preside over if Republicans have their way. And today we're going to start hearing from some Republicans or former Republicans who are all in. And that's really important. Like it's not enough to be a Republican or former Republican and to say, I don't support Donald, but I just can't bring myself to support Kamala Harris. You have to go all in on this because, as Judge Ludig, a very prominent conservative judge, said recently in his endorsement of Kamala Harris, this is about democracy. And if you don't support the only candidate on the ballot who supports democracy, then you're not a serious person, or you're not taking this seriously enough.
Yeah, I mean, I was there in 2016 for the Hillary Clinton DNC. I saw the DNC in 2020, and then in 2024, this is the evolution of the Democratic Party in that it has truly embraced the fact that it is a multiracial, multi-faith coalition. It has embraced the fact that it has progressives in the party. It has embraced the fact that it's willing to extend and embrace never Trump Republicans. And the difference is in the tone and also in the energy. It was like the joyful warrior spirit came out. They were fighters. Like, they came out fighting, every single one. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. In 2020, AOC got 90 seconds. And it was almost like the Democratic Party said, we don't know what to do with her and these progressives. Let's just give them 90 seconds. Yesterday, she got 7 minutes. And she brought the house down, right? And then you had Jasmine Crockett. Old DNC would have given her 30-second appearance in a video. They gave her 6-7 minutes. Jamie Raskin, right, came out. Each one of these people laid zingers into Donald, laid zingers in the GOP. You also had a video of a Never Trump Republican teeing up to what you were talking about today. This type of coalition that they're building of two different parties: a party that is going forward versus a party that is going backwards, a party for the middle class versus a party for the rich. And I really like the fact that in the speeches that I mentioned, each one of them made a point to talk about how Donald Trump in particular and Republicans are, what did the AOC say? Lining the bills, greasing the palms. If she says, she goes, lining their pockets and greasing the palms of their Wall Street backers. Now, one might think, oh, that's a good zinger, but Democrats didn't come out and say that, like, publicly. They're openly saying that is the party of the rich, the party of the 1%, the party of elitists, the parties of who don't care about you. We're the party for the rest of you. We'll protect Social Security, Medicare, healthcare, right? And Joe Biden did that. Joe Biden had 3 goals, which I believe he accomplished in what was his most successful speech that I've seen him give in perhaps the past 2 years. The 3 goals were,
Ever.
Number 1, let me remind you the threat, the enduring threat of Donald, and why I got into this race, why I came out of retirement. Charlottesville, the threat to democracy. This is what, folks, don't forget, that was number 1. Number 2, let me remind you what my administration has done. Laundry list of policy accomplishments and what he did, what he didn't have to do, which I think was very huge, Mary. Each and every single time he said, it wasn't just me, Kamala did it also. He said it at least 4 times. And then the third thing that he did was endorse, validate, and elevate Kamala Harris as not just his partner, but as the suitable president of the United States of America. Now, the reason why I think that's so important is when it's all said and done, I think the legacy of Joe Biden, we could talk about him being in the Senate for 200 years. We could talk about, that's a joke he does too, folks. From Scranton, we could talk about the sins also. And I think there was a course correction here, which I really appreciated, talking about the big picture theme, the multiracial, multi-faith coalition that includes Republicans. Warnock, AOC, and President Biden acknowledged the protesters. They acknowledged Gaza. They didn't talk down to them. They didn't condemn them. He said something big. I know the bar is low. The bar is in hell when it comes to Gaza, but he said they have a point. I can't tell you how many people on the Muslim and Arab WhatsApp were like, wow, that was big. Maybe he's listening, right? So that type of tone, Mary, that says that this is a big tent party that is willing to reach out to everyone and help everybody, including Republicans who didn't vote for me. That's the theme. And by the way, we're not the old party of the past. We're not timid. We're not afraid. We're not milquetoast. We're not centrist. We're putting on the brass knuckles with the tan suit. And I love the tan suit. I know we joke about the tan suit, but that tan suit is an example of embracing the Democratic Party and the joyful warriors, vibe. I'm old enough to remember, Mary, for those of us who are old heads, Obama wore the tan suit and the media had a field day for a week. So instead of shying away, what does Kamala Harris do? Makes a surprise appearance, wears a tan suit. You better believe that was intentional. She leans all the way in. I loved it. It was exquisite trolling. She looked fabulous while she was doing it. And the last thing I'll say before handing the baton about Kamala Harris, I'm from the Bay Area, as people know. I've seen her entire political career. And we always knew that she would be a star. We've seen her evolution. Yesterday and in the past month, I'm so glad you reminded us it's been a month. It's felt like 2 years. I'm like, oh my, when you said it was a month, I'm like, oh yes, it has been a month. I thought it's been 2 years. She was the most natural. She wore her skin, if you will. She came out. She gave you the vibe, like, this is my party. This is my barbecue. Welcome, everybody. She was like this. She was just chill. There was a casualness to it, an effortlessness to it. There was a joyful vibe. She had a smile on her face, and I'm sure you all are there. You felt it. I'm sure the energy was palpable. Something that has always been there, but this was an immediacy of the moment, a recognition how powerful the moment is, a joyful warrior spirit, and a resolute determination that we're not going back, we're going forward. And we're going forward with as many people as we can bring in, including Republicans against Trump. And you compare that to the misanthropic, cruel, terrified, awkward, weird, dorky energy of the RNC. And you sit here and you go, I know there's 2.5 months left, Mary, but if they can create and ride this momentum, I think November is going to be good news.
Yeah, and Danielle, you're in Chicago. You got in late last night because it took you 72 hours to get here thanks to weather. But you're here now. And you saw enough of last night to get a sense of what is playing out for this party. And I want to play a clip of Hillary Clinton because Wallace just mentioned the passing of torches. And I also, on the other side of that, and kind of as we go for the rest of the show, I want to make sure that we pay sufficient attention to things like authenticity, humanity. When people like Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Jasmine Crockett, Jamie Raskin, Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, and I could pretty much name every person who spoke last night. When they say the word love, or when they talk about loss, or when they describe their feelings about something, they're genuine. And that does not exist anywhere in the Republican Party. So let's mark that as we go. But first, here's Hillary Clinton in part of what I believe was the best speech she has ever given in her life,
Hear, hear.
passing a torch that she never got to hold.
I see the freedom to look our children in the eye and say, in America, you can go as far as your hard work and talent will take you, and mean it. And you know what? On the other side of that glass ceiling is Kamala Harris raising her hand and taking the oath of office as our 47th President of the United States. Because, my friends, when a barrier falls for one of us, it falls. It falls and clears the way for all of us. So for the next 78 days, we need to work harder than we ever have. We need to beat back the dangers that Trump and his allies pose to the rule of law and our way of life. Don't get distracted or complacent. Talk to your friends and neighbors. Volunteer. Be proud champions for the truth and for the country that we all love. I want my grandchildren and their grandchildren to know I was here at this moment, that we were here, and that we were with Kamala Harris every step of the way. This is our time, America. This is when we stand up. This is when we break through. The future is here. It's in our grasp. Let's go win it.
Yeah. Look, that was absolutely extraordinary. Unlike Brian, who's been apparently at every convention since the beginning of time, my first convention.
I'm not as old as Biden. I'm closing in on it.
My first convention was Hillary Clinton's convention in 2016, and To see her tonight, though, it is like last night, it was like light years. It feels like 2016 was light years away when we're talking about the time that we are living in and saying that it's only been a month, which is wild, guys. When I say that there's been a there was a tear in the universe in 2020, like I genuinely mean that, because time goes by so quickly. But what was astounding are the themes that you lifted up, Mary. Like when I got it within myself to hold back the vomit to watch the RNC for at least 10 minutes. It's like 10 minutes a day. It's all I could muster. My doctor gave prescription. It was like, don't ingest too much of it, for you'll lose your sight and your stomach. There was no talk of love. There was no talk of joy. There was no talk of family that felt like they were talking about all families and not just white Christian evangelical families, right? When you listen to, everyone from Senator Warnock, who made me want to become an avowed Christian, who I am not, right? But like he finished speaking and I was like, where do I sign up for church? Pass me the plate so that I can put money in it, right? Like it was extraordinary. Everyone's energy and them coming in as their authentic, full selves, from Representative Jasmine Crockett's alliteration, which is just, beyond, and AOC and the fire. It's like we have not just talent, but people who made me feel a renewed sense of patriotism that MAGA stole from me 8 years ago. Right? And I say that because I know that so many people listen to me and know the depths of my cynicism and the depths of my rage, because I have Baldwin rage inside of me, that I love this country so much that I feel the need to be able to critique it, right? But last night, I remembered why I do this work in the first place, why I wanted to work on Capitol Hill, why I wanted to be a public servant, why I wanted to be an educator. And for that sense of revival, like Hillary Clinton said, something is happening. Something is happening. And it is something that is organic. It is not something that is prescribed, right? You can't make this up. You can't make people feel energized and feel something that they don't. And so this renewed sense of hopefulness and possibility is what was done. And it was brilliant.
Yeah, all of that. I also really appreciated Hillary Clinton giving a shout out to Shirley Chisholm, who ran for president when I was little, but I remember her. She made such an indelible mark in my psyche for reasons I don't completely understand, but she paved the way. And Norm, it just seems, even though I confess I never imagined in my lifetime we would be on the brink of electing not just the first woman president, but the first Black woman president. I keep thinking progress isn't linear, and this country does a really great job of pushing back against any incremental gains by plunging us into darkness for very long periods of time. And now it seems, for the first time maybe in my lifetime, we are ready to catapult into the future, a future again that I didn't think was possible.
It is hard not to feel some exaltation and optimism about all of this. I want to mention a couple of other highlights from last night, and then one cautionary note. One is Steve Kerr, who was fantastic. And I have to say, Steve Kerr, Greg Popovich, I'm actually friends with Coach Pop, are amazing people who have spoken out and been courageous for a long time. The NBA is different. You cannot imagine actually an NFL coach, much less an NFL owner, being on the right side of justice. But I thought that was amazing. The other thing is, I was going back and forth in different places. Jacob Soboroff interviewed Tim Walz. And while he was doing that interview, Walz's two kids went up behind him and went like that behind his head. And I thought, I contrast that with when Donald's family came up into the box and Tiffany went over to try and get a kiss and he brushed her off completely. And the dysfunction there compared to, here at this moment, to have your kids kind of tweak you like that with the rabbit ears behind the head. I just thought it was so charming and so indicative of what it means to have a functional family.
But Norm, the mistake Tiffany made is she didn't introduce herself first.
That's right.
So,
it's sad. The other thing is, one thing I want us all to keep in mind, and it follows on what you said about how we may be on the verge of something fantastic. If this continues, and by the end of September, it looks like Democrats could sweep, certainly take the House along with winning the presidency. Just keep in mind that the October surprise is likely to be a government shutdown. The House Republicans can bring this government to a halt because we end the deal that we have on spending at the end of the fiscal year, which is the end of September. And they will roll the dice and shut down the government. And I have been urging the Biden White House, and I hope they will listen, to highlight this. This, if it's done, will be only because congressional Republicans, nihilistic, radical, dangerous, irresponsible, Mike Johnson congressional Republicans decide that they'll bring the House down so that they can get some tiny chance of winning. And the level of nervousness that you can see for them out there, that what they thought was a certain victory has been taken away from them and is no longer in their grasp. Beware of what horrible things they will do to try and retain control.
Yeah, Julie, I think one of the tricks for Democrats now is to hang on to the optimism and hope and belief in possibilities that's being generated by the megaton this week, while maintaining a realistic sense of the dangers. We have to hold both things. Both things are in tension. We can't be so blindly optimistic that we lose sight of the threat and because Democrats have a tendency to get complacent. I'm afraid it happened in 2020 after the 2020 election. But we also don't want to fall into a pit of despair. And I think that's one of the reasons Kamala Harris's campaign is so vitally important, is because of the injection of laughter and joy. And, it's as if we've been living in this very narrow band on the spectrum of human emotion, because Donald Trump is such a stunted, damaged, vile creature that we've all been trapped in his grievance and grievance and contempt and rage, that it's as if we've emerged from a dark cellar for the first time. So, we need to balance those things, because as Norm said, we cannot put anything past these people. Donald's desperate. The party's desperate. And I'm just curious if you're aware of any plans to alert people to the dangers. I think one plan, and it's one I particularly like, is for Kamala Harris to sweep all of the swing states and the states in the Southwest, so that if Georgia steals the election this time, it won't matter. But I don't know. I don't think that's a plan.
I do think there are many plans in place, but I want to touch on first just coming back for a minute to the joy. And I love how Waj has continued to refer back to Kamala Harris as a joyful warrior. One of the advantages of being somebody who has been on Team Kamala since 2019 is that I got to be part of that joyful warrior existence and that campaign. And that goes right to the heart.
Uh-oh.
We lost her.
We did indeed. Oh, she's back. Hello again.
One of the things that's been challenging for Kamala supporters for the past 5 years is the messages about where's Kamala, what's she doing, all that. Those of us who have been around her, who have stuck by her, who knew her, obviously she's had a career in public service well before her Senate run. But just going back to her 2019 campaign, the campaign was, the buttons, the t-shirts were for the people. She was the joyful warrior. And that theme last night, there was a lot of for the people there. We are seeing the joyful warrior. That's who she is. One of the things that if I wish everybody could spend 5 minutes with her, that I think is so important to realize about her is that when you're speaking to Kamala Harris one-on-one, she holds your hand, she grabs your arm, she looks you in the eye, and there is nothing else in that moment that matters to her. The notion that, just think about, none of us can do that in this world of cell phones and beeps and sounds and everything. And yet this woman, in her earnest and compassionate, empathic self, and which certainly Jasmine Crockett, hit on last night, but that she is able to connect with people. It has been such a joy to see that authentic piece of her be on the road, especially, with her reproductive freedom tour, with the economics tour that she's been on around the country. I will tell you, I've had this enormous privilege of getting to share with some of her supporters around the country opportunities to meet her at the tarmac or attend events around the country. I feel like Santa Claus when I reach out to people to be able to say, Kamala's going to be in Atlanta. If you'd like to, if you'd like to see her, I can help get you there. This is real. This joy that she brings out, this excitement for folks who have been, around. It is just something that it is a delight to see everybody else waking up to and really getting to recognize. And so I think, I don't know Tim Walz as well. He also seems like an authentic guy, but I really think, we are just so fortunate to have not just one president in Joe Biden, but an upcoming president with the most earnest and compassionate personality. In terms of, having a fight ahead and alerting people. For those of us who are in Chicago, you cannot help but miss the enormous police presence, the enormous Secret Service presence. It is real. You can't close your eyes to it. And it is a stark reminder of what we've been through as a country in the last few years, most notably on January 6th. We have to be braced for really difficult times. And the idea that we continue and the Democrats continue to hammer home last night as well, Project 2025, January 6th, 2021. We've got to remind people the contrast between these two parties, and we've got to remind them that this is a choice that we all have in what kind of country we want to live. And I think that, the focus on the battleground states, the focus on Project 2025, for those who are listening, they're going to keep hearing it, and they're not going to let us forget. The Democrats are not going to let us forget what we've been through and what we could have.
Yeah.
That's a really fortunate position to be in for all of us to see what we can have going forward.
Yeah. And there literally is no reason at all for this momentum to stop. I think it's going to grow. I said this a weekend. This is not a honeymoon. This is it. This is a movement, and this is where we're heading. It's just going to get bigger. Brian, I do want to talk a little bit more about what we need to be prepared for, because we know they're just cheaters. The only way Donald has ever won anything is to lie, cheat, and steal, because he's pathetic and he can't win anything legitimately. But, he's such a narcissist that a win is a win. He deserves to win. It doesn't matter the method by which he gets there. The Republican Party has taken that on. So we do need to worry about the situation in Georgia, what's happening with election workers, et cetera, et cetera. However, we've mentioned it a few times. I think it deserves to be seen again. This is a section of Representative Jasmine Crockett's remarks last night.
The Chaos Caucus couldn't elect a speaker, and the Oversight Committee was unhinged. I was going through all of this when I visited the Vice President's residence for the first time. As I approached Vice President Harris for our official photo, she turned to me and asked, "What's wrong?" Mind you, we'd never met, but she saw right through me. She saw the distress. I immediately began crying. And the most powerful woman in the world wiped my tears and listened. It's so hard for me to tell this story. She then said, among other things, "You are exactly where God wants you. Your district chose you because they believe in you, and so do I."
I tell you what, I'll have to give her another shout out from Texas, but she came up into the press booth after that speech, and there were a handful of us that asked her a couple of questions. What I was impressed by more than anything else with her was the fact that she not only is cognizant of the dangers of Donald Trump, but still maintains a healthy sense of hope because of it. And one of the things that she said was she's counting on Donald Trump to be the idiot that Donald Trump is, because she thinks the counterpoint rises, that the counter to that rises higher because of his chicanery. Stealing your word there, Norm. And I won't go with feckless or what was the other one, lickspittle, which is Vance. But
lickspittle's good.
Yeah, lickspittle's good. So to your point, Mary, what you were talking about, the GOP operatives that I've spoken with are planning to drop the October surprise that they want to drop as a character assassination attempt on the level of butter emails, that they did on Clinton, and that they've tried before many times. That little 2 week before the election surprise that they hope sways voters either on Walz. And by the way, Julie, I'm just going to say I love Tim Walz. He's every football coach I ever played for, and every football coach I aspired to be when I was a football coach. And I think that at the end of the day, I think that the tail of the tape here is going to be, you all speak of the energy, and that's encouraging, the energy to overcome the danger that exists, because the GOP has already telegraphed what they're going to do. The difference, of course, in this election is that the DOJ and the executive branch are owned and operated by Democrats who are already on point for what's going to happen after the ballots are cast. So you're not going to see a 3-hour delay in calling forth, local police. Tom Manger, who's who, by the way, there were Capitol Police there last night. Now that's one thing I haven't seen at conventions before, the Capitol Police being there. And Julie, to your point earlier, you talked to the police and SS president, Secret Service president, those are consistent. But what I have seen that is different, and I think this is a stratagem, is that they are embracing, working with not only the protesters, but with the press and with the convention goers. It's much more seamless than in the past, where they seem to appear to be bullies trying to force you into a box. They're not doing that. And the president himself, and this was a big part where he broke away from his prepared remarks, when he acknowledged the Palestinian protesters and said that they have a point. that diffused a whole hell of a lot of the anger that had been building that day. They had broken through a couple of fences, but by and large, that protest was very, very peaceful. So I think in all, what Jasmine spoke to, what we have with the police presence and what we have with the DOJ, I think the Democrats and the power structure is already responding to what the GOP is going to try and do after the election. And it looks, now look, it's still several weeks away from the election, but they look to be in trouble, and they certainly are acting like they're imploding. So that gives you a good idea of where the president and the DOJ have to go in the future. And I think that you're looking at the Democratic Party being responsive ahead of time. I think they learned from 2016 and 2020. Speaking of what Waj said earlier about evolution, I think you're seeing the evolution of response to what is now. Look, we're 8 years into. We know what Donald Trump's playbook is. We know what if there's no surprises here at this point. They're full of shit, and they're going to try and go after you any way they can, like you said, Mary, to ensure a victory. So seeing these signs ahead of time that there is already a response in place, and they are already responding to it, I think adds to the hopeful or helpful or wonderful, joyous warrior situation that the Democrats are now putting forward.
I was just going to say, Mary, real quick, Brian, I also think the lawyers that are working behind the scenes, I mean, the lawyers that are not out front, the ones that are racing, have been fighting this fight, Mark Elias, they're part of our strategy.
Yeah, and you're right. And I'll tell you another part of the strategy that I really like. I covered the VP on a couple of times as a pool reporter on stops in LA. I was not impressed. This is, months ago, with the communication staff. Let me tell you, that has changed dramatically. The VP's communication staff, their advanced staff has improved, and I think they got an infusion of help, but I also think that they've stepped up their game. I think the VP has really stepped up her game going forward. It shows. And that's not by happenstance. I think that there is a concerted effort in the Democratic Party to capitalize and learn from their mistakes, which the Democratic Party, you said earlier, Mary, they don't always do. So that's an encouragement as a reporter covering it.
One piece of news, Mary, I just saw, not a surprising one, but a really deeply disturbing one. There's reporting that Donald Trump has called Bibi Netanyahu and urged him not to agree to a ceasefire because it would help Joe Biden. So after he blew up the border deal, now he's trying to blow up the Middle East and encourage a regional war because he thinks it would help him. It is.
He should be arrested and tried as a spy.
Yeah. The recklessness, the anti-Americanism, the traitorous behavior of this monster goes on and on and on.
Thank you, Merrick Garland. Thank you, illegitimate, corrupt supermajority of the Supreme Court. What the, that's illegal. But criminals who don't go to prison keep committing crimes.
Benedict
Who's going to stop him? Who's going to stop him? And Danielle, this is what we're dealing with. Like, this is, these are the two poles of our current existence. We need the joy and the laughter because we have been plunged into darkness for so long. But then if we lose sight of the darkness, here comes Donald Trump to make things even worse because he still has power. And it's, sorry, I'm tired. I'm really tired. We're all really tired. It would be just so lovely to be able to bask for 5 minutes in the joy of the possible. right? Instead, we're still like trapped in the art of the possible. It's crazy making. And I just want to show you an image that illustrates something you and I discussed earlier, Danielle, which is this weird, like, permission to be patriotic again, you know, in contradistinction to what the Republican Party stands for now. This is the top image is from last night. The bottom image is from one of the horror show nights at the Republican convention, whenever that was. I think in 427 BCE. Okay, so on the DNC, you have a sea of signs saying USA and chants of USA. Have we ever heard that from Democrats before? I'm not really sure. On the bottom, RNC 2024, a bunch of happy white people holding up signs that say mass deportation now. The contrast could not be more obvious. And the fact, Danielle, that our message is breaking through is why Donald Trump picked up the phone to commit a crime, to beg another corrupt leader, Benjamin Netanyahu, to do his bidding, because he knows, absent somebody else interfering on his behalf, just as they did in 2016, he loses.
I mean, a couple of things like those, that image of the sea of, as Waj just said in the chat, the sea of diverse white people, at the,
some were older and younger,
right, and some were blonde and brown hair,
larger and smaller,
right, so, glasses and none, but it reminds me of images, and I'm going to say something and people are going to be like, oh, but it's the truth. Images of flipping through history books when I was in, when I was in high school, and it was like the well-dressed white people at the lynching, right? Yep. Like that. I mean, those are the images that the RNC conjures for me in their exclusivity around their vision of America. And so, a couple of things on the Donald Trump part is that this is what the mainstream corporate media should be paying attention to. This is what should be being written about and talking about the fact that Donald Trump is a criminal and that he's literally in the midst of committing a war crime by contacting Netanyahu to divert what has desperately been needed in the last 10 months, which is a ceasefire. Right? That this self-centered son of a bitch would like halt the killings of tens of thousands of people to serve his own fucking needs. And like the mainstream media wanted to spend months talking about Joe Biden's age, but not the danger and the weaponization of Donald Trump's narcissism is fucking beyond me. Right?
Well,
but I think that, we need to function in a place of both being the joyful warriors and being extraordinarily vigilant on what the danger is that it lies in front of us. In 77 days, it is either democracy prevails with our first historic Madam President, or we live inside of a fascist regime where Donald Trump, based on his whims of how he wakes up that day, gets to decide who lives or who dies. That's what that phone call was about.
Yeah.
It is about who gets to live and who gets to die, and who the fuck do you want making that decision? Sure as hell not Donald Trump.
Well, unfortunately, a lot of people want it to be him, which is a conversation for another time, but that is something that we need to understand better. The good news, Norm, and unfortunately we have to wrap up. I can continue talking to you until the convention starts later today, but we have to stop in a minute. But I just kind of want to get just one thing everybody's looking to tonight on tonight's lineup. But first, I just want to mention that I think the Democratic message is breaking through. The numbers, viewer-wise, it were 21% greater for the Democrats on their day one of the convention versus Republicans on their day one. So that's good news. And we just have to keep doing, as Danielle said, doing both and.
So I would say a couple of things. I mentioned Adam Kinzinger. We're going to see some Republicans, conservative Republicans, creating a permission structure for Republicans to vote for Kamala Harris and for Democrats down the line. And Julie, that includes not voting for Larry Hogan, who is truly a wolf trying to put on the sheep's clothing. The second thing is, my guess is that Michelle Obama is going to get a reception that's bigger than Barack Obama's, and that may not rival Hillary Clinton, but that's one to watch. And, you know, it's the fact that the jibe about that Jamie did about Mike Pence saying to J.D. Vance, you want this job, your predecessor, he tried to kill him. At the Republican convention, no former presidents, no former vice presidents, very few significant figures in the party. Here we're trotting out former presidents, former candidates, former vice presidents, the cream of the crop. And that contrast, I think, which we will also see tonight, is going to be a telling one.
Absolutely. And I just want to hammer on your point about Larry Hogan. It is not enough to vote for Kamala Harris and then Republicans down ballot. You need to be voting for Democrats up and down the ballot, because the only way we right the ship is to give Democrats meaningful majorities across the board. Electing Larry Hogan to the Senate gets us nowhere. And Norm is right. He's a wolf in sheep's clothing. Waj?
I think it would be amazing if Barack Obama came out in a tan suit. That's my dream. But I feel like seeing the Obamas passing the torch, if you will, to Kamala Harris as the first Black family that ascended to the White House will be extremely powerful. And to Norm's point of the permission structure, also note that the Mesa, Arizona mayor, John Giles, a Republican, is speaking tonight. He is making the case for Harris Walls. And again, to complement this multiracial, multi-faith kind of progressive big tent, we have Bernie Sanders coming out today too. So I think you're going to see the continuation of that theme, that this is a big tent Democratic Party that is pushing the ball forward, willing to embrace the elements that it once oftentimes was ashamed of, people of color, women, progressives, and willing to extend the tent to never Trump Republicans or conservatives who realize the unique threat of Donald to our democracy. And I want them to bring that spirit and that fire. And the best communicators, one of the best communicators of all time for the Democrats, Barack and Michelle. So I expect them to bring the house down.
Yeah, it's going to be quite something. Julie, you're going to be on the floor again tonight. What are you looking for? Any other Maryland speakers going to be joining us?
So, I mean, y'all are going to have to tell me, because I've been so busy delegating and meeting with people that I don't even know who's on. I think tonight's the Doug night, right? Doug Emhoff is on. Is that right?
Yes. Oh, he is? Oh.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Okay, good. Phew. So what I was going to say is that I really, if you're a Kamala fan, you're also a Doug fan. And as a Jewish woman, I have been grateful to Doug Emhoff's work on countering anti-Semitism. And I am really hoping he will touch on that and pushing back against hate. And that's something that is really important to me in my work with Jewish voters. So I'm hoping to hear that. And I'm just excited to be there.
Yeah, that's it. It's again, there's no reason to expect any dip in quality or intensity or energy. So Danielle, just quick thoughts and then we'll head out.
I'm just, I'm super excited for tonight to be on the floor. I'm gonna do, or like in this in the space. I'm super excited for all of that. I'm gonna give a quick shameless plug for my YouTube channel, where I'm gonna be posting videos and content from my POV, which is at Danielle Moody _ again at Danielle Moody _ and excited. I'm super excited. I want to stay in a hopeful place, but in a vigilant place. So
yeah. All right. Well, thank you all so much. This has been great. Our wrap up of day 1 of the Democratic National Convention, our preview of day 2. Yeah, it's incredible. I'm exhausted already, Julie. I don't know. I guess we're just gonna run on fumes until we get to.
No sleep till November.
That's right. Well, I'd like to sleep a little bit before then, but at least no sleep until Friday. That I can do. That I can totally do. But it feels good. It feels good to be where we are right now. Again, everybody subscribe to Danielle's YouTube channel. Just subscribe to Jen Taub's YouTube channel. I'll have the handle next time when I'm a little more organized and rested. And yeah, please subscribe to our channel too. We're really trying to grow, and we can't do that without you. It doesn't cost anything. It just means you're alerted every time we drop new videos, which is a lot, especially this week. So Norm, Brian, Danielle, Waj, Julie, is so good to be with all of you. Thanks to everybody watching. We will be back with more from the convention this week. Thank you so much. We will see you soon. In the meantime, please stay safe and be kind.